For example, banks, they take private wealth and then they grow it by investing it somewhere else. So the same view should be kept for data. Data should not be seen as identity which somebody can steal or somebody can impersonate. It should be seen as property which you should be allowed to sell, and then you should know that you are selling it. You should know what you are getting in return. And so if this data market is available, it can be used within India, it can be used outside. And there is a whole architecture actually we can design around it. That there will be this quality preserving databases, there will be these model providers who will actually test on whatever is available, and then there will be a, let's say, a benchmarking platform where it will record what are the best models for this particular problem. So there can be a whole market created, and then it will be kind of a global AI commons because it won't be restricted to one geography.
I hope some students of yours or some entrepreneurs are listening and actually making what you're saying.
Thank you. In line with the previous speakers and rapid fire, I jotted down a few notes. One is keeping governance light but trustworthy. So the comment is open, neutral, and credible. Making the platform accessible in practice across languages, regions, and levels of capacity. Connecting with comparable platforms, we haven't discussed that, but it is extremely important to share use cases and knowledge that can strengthen similar initiatives on a worldwide scale while reducing the risk of duplication. That is, I think, what the summit is also about. And finally, and above all, using the commons to move from isolated pilots to solutions that deliver impact and scale. These are my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And I am looking forward to how it comes together. How it's a big sagar manthan happening of use cases. What's the Amrit which comes out? I'm looking forward. So thank you all of you for being there today. Thank you to all the panelists for traveling all over from India to be here. And hope. Oh, sorry, we have some questions.
आ क्यों नहीं रही आवाज
Hi, I am absolutely intriguing session. I am Dr. Mehta and I head, because I belong to the incubation ecosystem of this state, I head the incubation center of Indian University, wherein we are not just incubating startups but also self-help groups. And the discussion was about livelihood and about entrepreneurship. We are incubating several self-help groups who already turned their ideas into micro enterprises, and our startups are generating revenue for 5 crores. We work closely, the startup works closely with Women on Wings from Netherlands, with PUM in Netherlands, and so many other organizations. I just want to ask that how can the commons integrate into the university-led incubation models as to empower grassroots innovators in India and across the global south? That is my question. I can't actually pinpoint who specifically would answer, but depends on maybe whoever wishes to throw inside of this.
How the universities can be part of the AI platform.
Yeah, I think building that network is going to be critical, and whether it's the incubation center that you are talking about, or even center of excellences that are emerging in the country, the AI hubs in Africa, similar initiatives elsewhere in the world. If the goals and objectives are similar and like-minded organizations exist, we should use the summit extensively for facilitating these networks to get formed, because that's the starting point. I mean, once that is done, and I'm sure it could go in different ways and different pathways may emerge. No, but that's the starting point.
Hi, great discussion. Just quickly, one question. We've been speaking about LLMs and generative AI, but it seems that the window to AGI is pretty close, looking at about 4 to 5 years. So, where are we on that? Have we started to reimagine the future? And yeah, so your thoughts on that? We already started to reimagine the future, and how are we planning to actually de-risk this? So those are the two questions that I have for you. Thanks.
Professor, you would like to? And especially the de-risk part.
So yeah, that. So what do you mean by AGI, for example? That would be, to answer it properly, I have to understand what do you mean by artificial general intelligence.
Artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
So AI will be actually training AI in the future. The kind of knowledge that's going to be unlocked in the future is going to be immense, right? So yeah, so something that we've been doing maybe we couldn't have done in centuries is going to be unlocked, right? So that's what I mean.
No, but in practice, what we are seeing is that as these LLMs are getting bigger and bigger, their accuracy is falling. It's not that with more and more investment, it is becoming more and more precise. So there is no, so I don't see how do you learn that from here we are very close to AGI. I think we are just here. We don't know what will happen in the future. So where we are, we are. But whether this will improve by putting more and more money, it's not clear at all.
No, of course, I agree. That
So
is
the
good.
technology has to change. Now, if you are asking whether a new technology will come,
So which is
your guess will be as good as mine.
Agreed. Yeah, that's the hardest thing to do is to predict the future. But when you see the unitary robot on the stage do a backflip, then and integrated with the kind of models that we're building right now, I think that
Sure. So, I mean, robots have been building our cars and they have been building, for example, semiconductors and everything. So, a specific laborious task, they are good to doing it, but it doesn't mean that the intelligence is general. It's specific to a task. So, task specific, sure, this is why we are discussing the use cases. You pick a use case and you create an AI just for it.
So thank you everyone. Thank you so much. If there are more questions, the panelists are all around, and maybe let's just catch them and have our discussions, in-depth discussions about. It could be philosophical. It could be what happens next, which is for everyone's guess. That's what we know. Thank you everyone, and over to you, David.
वो कविता मैम को भी वो कराओगी क्या कविता मैम है
मुझे नहीं पता अरे नहीं
हो गया ये रख एक उधर से हो गया
होल्डर्स उठा के लाओ ये जैसे ही उतरेंगे ना हनुमान इनको
होल्डर्स
होल्डर्स में
5
पकड़ा देना हाँ
5 है 5
होल्डर्स ले आना
होल्डर्स लेके आओ तुम
फोटो तो ये वाले नाम है
हाँ हाँ
Thank you once again to our panelists for the insightful conversation. Without further ado, I would like to immediately start our next panel. The next panel will be on the global AI impact
उसको तो
war.
दूसरी
Really what we'll be looking at is how do we measure and recognize the effectivity of AI use cases across the global south.
आराम से
That
हाँ
we invite Amlan Mohati, fellow at Carnegie India, to moderate this session. He joined on the panel Deepak Mishra, advisor to World Bank, Madan Pataki, managing trustee and founder of HMI Foundation, Kirti Pandey, mission director of Open AgriNet, Maya Sherman, innovation attaché at the Embassy of Israel in India, and Nakul Jain, MD and CEO of Bhagwani Global AI. Over to you, Mohammed.
उनसे जाकर पूछो उनको पूछो सर सर सर
इतना इतना जल्दी नहीं बुलाना चाहिए, तुरंत की तुरंत।
to explain for it, just everyone so you know that we're constrained for time. Some of us on this panel need to be at the working group meeting at 5. So we're actually going to just try and wrap this up in 30 minutes, maybe
ये
shorter
दीपक
than
मिश्रा,
usually planned. So that
नहीं
will be panelists,
दीपक
quick,
मिश्रा तो है ही है भाई
almost
वर्ल्ड
rapid
बैंक।
fire style, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate that brevity as well. And we can wrap up by 4:50, so some of us can make it to working group meeting. Okay, so I'm not going to introduce all of the speakers, everyone in the delegations are on placards here, but I do want to take a moment to just acknowledge that this is really diverse panel. So thank you all for being here. We have obviously diplomats, we have grassroots implementers, we have people working on tech-forward initiatives, we have people in global perspective. So I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. Really, the first section kind of set out why we're even doing this panel. There are two clear outcomes for the working group. There's the global AI commons, and there's this idea of creating a global AI impact award, right? So really want to reward the countries, the developers, the builders for creating AI use cases that are making a real impact. So we wanted to use this panel to inform that second deliverable on the AI impact awards themselves, right? What should be the awards award? What should they look like? What should the institutionalized institutionalization process look like? And so I'm trying to break it down actually to three fundamental questions, right? Which hopefully we can answer at the end of this panel. One is, what are the types of AI use cases which have demonstrable real-world impact, which something like a global AI impact award will actually recognize. Two is to be able to identify what's a useful
ये लास्ट है ना?
use case in the real world. What are the metrics that we should use to be able to measure the impact at scale? And the related question is, what's in some way restricting the barriers for us? And finally, trying to understand what those award solutions look like, right? What is the structure of this award system? How do we maintain continuity across this obviously summit going forward? So really thinking about institutions. So those are three big, at least goals in 30 minutes. I'm setting myself, I know, for failure, but that's just how we should do it. So I'll start maybe with you, Nakul, if I can, right? Right at the end, end-to-end conversation. But really, if you can very briefly, you walk across different sectors in India, right? Working at global healthcare, agriculture, education seems to be the focus areas. Integrating all of this into citizen welfare services seems to be another focus area. Can you just identify 2 or 3 high impact types of use cases, as specifically for identity you want it to be? But you can explain why you think those are the most impactful. What is the real world impact you're seeing in those 2 or 3 types of use cases that perhaps we should be awarding to the global AI impact award?
सबको देना था, उसी पैनल वालों को देना था बुक। सब जो उस पैनल में थे ना बुक।
Education, older reading fluency has been one of the solutions where we've built an application to assess fluency levels of children. Through repeated studies, it's been seen that the fluency levels of students in a particular grade do not match that of what is required at particular grade, which means there's a problem that needs to start with assessment followed by remediation. And this is something that we've been able to work with government of Gujarat and government of Rajasthan, where for students from class 2nd to class 8, we've been able to build a solution, and this helps them assess their fluency, which can then provide the teachers with a more targeted intervention opportunity, because now at a student level, the app is able to reduce where a particular student lacks. Over the course of last couple of years, we've seen this solution being rolled out in more than 100,000 schools, 200,000 teachers already using it. We've done assessment for more than 5 million students and a total of roughly
हमारा वो जा रहा है वही चाहिए, वो आवाज़ जा रही है।
pretty big numbers
इसमें पहले वाले में तो आवाज़ जा रही
what
है।
AI could have done. And I'll come to the commonality, but let me just quickly mention the other use cases. Health. TV is a big burden in India. Active case finding is one of the main culprits because of which we are still, a few years away before getting free TV. And one of the major reasons is a lot of these patients are either asymptomatic or partially symptomatic, which means the current rule-based algorithms that are currently being used might miss these patients. So we were able to build a non-invasive, low-cost solution that, in addition to symptomatic data, is also able to capture cough sounds, solicited cough sounds, and is able to screen for TB patients, which essentially means that now the health workers that are already going door to door need to just collect one additional signal apart from what they were already collecting. The solution already deployed across 10 states. We have done 200,000 odd inferences. And what the result that we were able to find was there was a 13% additional addition to the already existing cases because those patients that were flagged by the cough application were asymptomatic or partially symptomatic, right? So these are some of the real world impact that we've been seeing, whether it's increasing the fluency in directing interventions or actual, life-saving indications that an application of screening can do, right?
Nakul, thank you for that. I'll just come back to you on the commonality point, which I know you were coming back to. But maybe if you can just pick up from a few more sectors, right, to just try and look at across the sector, across sectorally, what those commonalities could be. Kirti, if I can come to you. You've worked a lot in the agri-stack space, obviously looking at AI-led interventions. So two short questions, if you can answer them briefly. One, again, same question, high impact use cases in the agricultural sector, if you can give me one or two examples. But two, in the way that kind of Nakul was also describing it, what is it about AI, right, that's actually unique, that's providing that real world impact, right? Because we've had obviously traditional automation systems, Nakul gave the example of like maybe rules-based systems don't particularly work in some scenarios. You want to, develop new types of systems which are, based on new machine learning systems. So in the agricultural context, what are high impact use cases and why is the use of AI particularly relevant there?
So talking about high impact use cases, I'll bring in the example of Mahavistar, which was discussed in the fireside chat as well as Bharat Vistar, where we are implementing a DPI plus AI approach to agriculture. So bringing AI on top of DPIs like AgriStack, bringing population scale to agriculture. The topmost use cases for us are scheme information, scheme application, and benefit status tracking for the schemes. Earlier, a farmer had to visit the department or the ministry 4 to 5 times in a day, 4 to 5 times for application of a scheme. So that means loss of labor, loss of a working day. Now this can be digitized. It brings an efficiency not only for the farmer but also for the system, which does not have to deal with multiple paper applications. Talking about AI, where AI can bring in maximum impact, let's talk, looking at agriculture, in India we have one extension worker for about 1,000 to 1,500 farmers. If you go to Africa, the ratio is 1:5,000 or 1:10,000 depending on different countries. So while the availability and intent to provide services and advisory to farmer is there, being able to provide in real time in their own language is missing. So AI converts the scarce availability of information into a continuous information available to farmers in their local language. And I would also like to double click on the impact of voice. If you look at the farming ecosystem in India and in the global south, most of the women farmers are still on their feature phones. So they are not very comfortable using chatbots. So if these can be enabled with voice-based, AI-based voice telephony systems like Vasudha in Maharashtra and other such solutions coming up, which Charlie spoke about in the earlier panel, that can bring in real inclusivity.
So this is what I've got so far, right? Across these three sectors, agriculture, healthcare, education, this is really about improving learning outcomes through direct remedial interventions. Similarly with healthcare, right, we are trying to identify and make medical interventions. And I think with the agricultural use case, I think efficiency was the kind of front and center. But I think what was really interesting is this why AI, I think, question, right? People constantly ask why. You just want to tap on AI because it's, in trend, but it seems like it's at least providing at least what I'm gathering 3 C's, right? It's contextual, it's conversational, and it's continuous, right? So I think that's something that, for me at least, is a good takeaway. You ended with an interesting point about inclusivity, right? So Madan, I want to just come to you because across education and healthcare and obviously agriculture too, it's really important to ensure that these are not just serving urban use cases, right? We focus a lot, that's the kind of stuff that gets all of the hype and attention, but each of these 3 outcomes seem to have a relevance for rural markets, right? We've done a lot of work in the rural areas. if I can ask you to maybe, if you want to comment on any of these use cases, great, but really to focus on how do we ensure when we're measuring for impact, there is an element for inclusivity that we're evaluating, right? How would you build in that into the metric?
Sure, thank you. I would flip it around and say that the main bulk is in rural, urban is being included, right? So I think we should look at cases where we can impact 1 billion people who all live in peri-urban, rural hinterlands of India. So therefore, the conceptualization that I have is it's not AI at the center, people around it, it's people at the center and AI around it. So therefore, the construct of Jan AI. 3 things come out from well, the use cases are great. With the work I've done, three challenges come. How do you reach the last mile, right? How do you take solutions to the last mile? How do you build that trust where the solutions are adopted and made to work? And third, how do you create capacities of that cluster? It could be a village, a gram panchayat or a taluka level, to be able to own and decide what they want to do with the solutions that are coming out and craft their own pathways than being told top down that you do this, right? So to my mind, I think if Gandhiji was alive in this day and age, he would have probably looked at AI as the new digital charka, right? So how can we visualize AI as a digital charka where you empower communities to adopt that charka to weave their own destinies by understanding the power of it, by trusting the layer that brings this to it, and by making sure that the last mile, impact for me is when the farmer is able to answer, has this helped you earn 1,000 rupees more? A women entrepreneur is able to answer, has it helped you get 50 customers new, right? Has it helped a young person find a job in the local environs itself? So I think if you can work backwards, create these layers, and then apply the power of tech that we're all talking about, then the real impact of changing lives on the ground will be felt. So that's the endeavor for us at Jan AI, where we're trying to this year create India's first 100 AI-ready villages, where we can truly say, yes, this village has taken AI and created maximum impact at a village level for communities and households to improve from AI.
So if we have to ask the question to measure impact from an inclusivity lens, in the way you described, would it be how many people in the rural area have you impacted?
Absolutely. In fact, it will come back to what this working group is about. What is the economic growth of the village? What is the social good that is delivered? And these are very measurable metrics.
Okay. Thanks, Madan. Deepak, if I can come to you, right? You're obviously, advising World Bank. You're at ICRIER. A lot of economic impact analysis that's happening, right? So if I can just ask you some of these questions that we were asking, how easy are they to actually measure meaningfully, authentically, right? It's one thing to say how many people are you impacting in the rural areas, but this question of impact itself is a very nebulous term, right? You can focus on some specific tangible outputs like agricultural productivity, makes sense, but in other areas, perhaps it's not so easy to do. So your assessment of whether it's actually possible to evaluate some of these questions and build them into something like a global impact award?
Yeah, very short answer is very difficult. But let me start with a non-AI example. So in 2026, China has about 150 companies which are making electric vehicles, and they're going to roll out 3,000 models of electric cars in China. In India, we have about 4 companies making electric cars, and we have 20 models of electric vehicles being rolled out as new models. It's not AI, but it's about scale. It's about impact. So what's the big difference between China and India when it comes to the fact that they could do 126 EVs versus 4 here? And the story is the same if you go to AI too. And to me, that's because the answer to this lies in a statement that we had a report in 2016 in the World Bank called Digital Dividends, where we looked at digital economy and said, why are the digital dividends not spreading very fast to the rest of the world? And the answer was, digital revolution needs a very strong analog foundation. So without a strong foundation on the analog side, you actually can't spread digital as fast. And the example that Professor Nitin Saxena gave here was a wonderful example that people is doing it. Why is Odisha, Chhattisgarh or Gujarat not copying it? There might be, but the answer is the analog foundation part of it. Who in Chhattisgarh is responsible for doing the grievance mechanism redressal there, and whether he or she has any incentive to solve that problem? So you can do this top down, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath forcing you to solve this problem, or Prime Minister Modi, or you do bottom up incentive mechanisms. So to me, the big reason for scale and impact that we're not having in India, and I think it's not just about taking one idea and scaling up on the whole all of India. You could actually do a lot of replicability of a good idea. And if you do that, so to me, the biggest thing that we're missing at this point is the right incentives for people to roll this out and adopt it and be a champion.
Just a quick follow-up. So we need to get analog right before we tap on AI to scale. Do you see it as sequential, or for us to be able to leapfrog, really, the leapfrog opportunity doesn't need to happen in parallel?
No, thankfully you can do it in parallel. And often the solution to the analog foundation strengthening lies in digital. So you could simultaneously do that, but I think you got to get the incentive right. And I think at this point we are still very focused on getting the technology, the supply side, and also kind of creating the demand for it, but not getting the people who are going to champion this technology, whether they have the right incentive to scale up and replicate. And I feel that's the big messaging in the Indian context.
Okay, thanks, Deepak. Maya, can I come to you? So you were really focused on India, like the first 15 minutes of this panel. It'd be good to get a global perspective. Is any of this resonating? Obviously, you're a diplomat, at the embassy, Israeli embassy in India. Is any of this resonating with you? Does this make sense for countries, with very different demographics? And two, more broadly, what are the types of metrics that we should really be considering for something like a global? Is that something we're missing because we're just blind to?
Thank you for this. I think that, first of all, I started here in the Indian development sector, so I'm coming from these kind of discussions. I feel that at the current stage, we do share a lot of the challenges. So, great interventions, and still we are seeing this kind of challenges in the impact measurement. How do we actually measure this over time? And of course, each country will address it a bit differently. So, Israel, very small demography. In the end, we are looking for, I would say, very fast ROIs. We're looking for deep tech technologies. We're looking for this faster integration into industry. But in the same time, when we're speaking about diversity, inclusive growth, this I think that we're also looking into. And I think that we're seeing these common trends repeating themselves. I feel that we're in this very interesting time in which AI has evolved enough in terms of the discussion that we're no longer looking just for numbers. We're looking for numbers over time. So it's no longer just how many users were able to use X using AI. We want to see for how long they can maintain it. So I would say that the upcoming parameters should look like, especially in the informal sector. I'm also part of GPI, whether we're actually focusing much more on AI literacy for the informal Indian sector. So it's no longer how many users were able to use this for a certain duration. We want to see how scalable the intervention can be. So maintenance is one. I would say clearly everything connected to interoperability, the ability to, first of all, being able to implement a certain intervention across different places and locations, the ability to open source the intervention as well. And these are new things, and I feel that they are connected to the fact that if in the beginning we were looking for the more sophisticated technology, something that is binary, we can say exactly how much a certain campaign increased the ROI. Today we're trying to answer more complex and interesting questions. We're trying to say, okay, we have some binary inputs, but if we're trying to enhance economic growth and social good, AI has to answer some interesting sociocultural challenges in them. So parameters, of course, of languages, open source, diversity as a whole, these are, I feel, what we are currently looking into. So it's almost about how can we make AI to be our day-to-day usage and instrument. That's what I feel we'll be looking at when it comes to the future impact assessment of this.
Thanks, Maya. So I think very clear, these things that we might think of as global south challenges actually are cross-cultural, cross-natural. So I think that's the whole point that the ambassador was making as well, right? What do we call it global south? Really, I think that was useful insight. But you did mention, I think, this point about open source, openness. So, Kirti, I want to come to you on that. You obviously represent costs as well. So, I just wanted to think about and talk about, the value and the importance of openness. We heard, obviously, Debjani talk about this in the first session. Fundamental to the design principle of DPI is have scale is openness. Can you describe some ways in which the current AI plus DPI approach that you're using with the agricultural use cases embodies openness?
Yeah,
and why is that important?
So why is that important? I feel openness in today's date and time is not good to have, it's a must have. If you look at agriculture sector, farmer is not just a crop, is not just growing a crop. They are also cultivating livestock, they also have poultry, aquaculture, fisheries, so on and so forth. Now, if we are building closed solutions, we might want farmers to go into 4 apps, set up 4 different logins, have 4 different registries, and be confused by all of it. What we are doing in Open AgriNet, Mahavistar, and Bharat Vistar is trying to build open source AI, like solution which is integrable with multiple services. In case of Mahavistar, we have about 200 plus warehouses services integrated. We have 300 plus APMC information providing APMCs providing market information. We have the fisheries department, the livestock department, and the aquaculture department all integrated into it because it's based on open APIs. So this makes it easier to avoid replicability, easier to reuse, and enables different departments to enable their use cases for the farmers in the same interface without us requiring them to sign into multiple applications. So this builds in trust and also provides space and scope for the ecosystem to grow. It's not about one department, one sector, one particular organization growing. It is for an ecosystem growth, and I think we were also discussing about, there was somebody from the incubation space there. Maharashtra is also trying to integrate the startups from their, the AI startups which are in the, incubated by the state of Maharashtra into the Mahavistar app. So by building on open interoperable systems, we are providing that fertile ground for public, private, Samaj Sarkar Bazaar integration, so to say.
Yeah, very interesting examples. Nakul, I'll come back to you, right? Clearly, we've identified a big challenge is how do you actually measure, right, for impact. So I'm just wondering what, and we've heard obviously this big focus on public-private partnership throughout, and obviously developing the use cases. I was just wondering, do you see a role for public-private partnership in measuring impact itself, right? So one way you could answer this, in fact, what I would like you to answer is how does Vadvani AI itself measure the impact of solutions it's developing, supporting, right? What kind of systems you have in place? And 2 is how do you share this data with government, if at all, for them to be able to understand actually what's impacting, what are impactful applications, for them to be able to design policy frameworks based on this evidence?
Sure. So, all of us do already know what kind of matrices that need to be measured for performance, for adoption, for impact, right? And we all understand the differences between all of them, right? It's not like Vadvani AI as an organization does something new in terms of defining how to measure impact. It's more to do with the process. So rather than having measurement as an afterthought, what we ensure is it's a part of the journey right from the inception of, or the, thought of the use case itself. While we analyze whether a use case is worth putting in money, resources, efforts into, we also make sure that we already know how will the impact be measured, and is this measurable, is this cheap enough for us to measure, or will be a very expensive proposition to even measure the impact. So all these are built into every aspect of the journey, whether it's at the design, whether it's at the development, or whether it's during the deployment. And you are not just sharing these matrices with the government, but you are co-creating with them. So to answer the question, it's not like we share this with the government. When we are working with the government to build some of these use cases, we collectively establish protocols on how these measurements will happen at the time of inception, so that government find a co-ownership of all of this. Lastly, also, in terms of public-private partnership and Vadvani AI Global as an organization, given that we've started operating across the different countries now, there's also a shared language that we are trying to create. That how can we learn from various processes or matrices that a lot of these other countries are using to measure impact versus what we've been doing, and how can a common taxonomy, how can a common process framework be established, so that some of these knowledge could be shared between countries, and of course, impact could be measured as the final outcome and not just adoption of a particular use case.
Yeah, thanks, Nakul. First, I just want to mention, I've been going rapid fire, but really appreciate the brief
crisp responses. I got to say, I do this a lot as a moderator. This has been excellent so far. I do have to wrap up though in the next 10 minutes or so, and I want to take some questions as well. So maybe we can do a final couple of questions. Maya, just maybe on the point that Kapil was saying. We know what to measure, performance, scale, impact, those things are easy to measure. The one thing that's come up a lot is trust, right? And trust is really hard to measure. It's like very intangible, it's interpersonal. How do you measure for trust, right? One way, I think about it is you measure for reliability, you measure for some specific security standards, but is there a way that you're thinking about evaluating trust itself and safety more broadly in the context of how we would reward someone as an impactful use case?
Well, I think that it's a great question because I think that we're constantly discussing it when it comes to interventions. And I say this because there is something with paradoxical. We're trying to bring an instrument, technological instrument, that is not really increasing the trust. AI has a lot of problematic aspects when it comes to human performance, the way that it can replace it. So it's almost that we're trying to put innovation and then to consider that we have to trust it. So I think that we first of all need to understand it's not necessarily a process or an intervention that's supposed to make our life easy when we're trying to think of trust as a whole. But it doesn't mean that we should not work harder. I think that what's been helpful for a lot of the intervention that we've been doing in India and I think in other places was to make sure that we are gathering the right feedback and constantly. It's almost like I feel that a lot of the interventions have become incredibly agile in this regard. This constant connection with the users, understanding how we can increase a bit more the relations of them with the intervention, with the instrument. So the communication here is key. And to make sure that it's a very bottom-up process. So I think in the past we were focusing, you have the technology, you are going around it. It's the user having a certain understanding, approach, a long-term approach to what the intervention is about to be. So I think this has proven to be a successful method of, first of all, putting the user at the center when it comes to how they're perceiving trust and how we can measure it better. But I'll be frank, this is something that, at least from the interventions I've been involved with, it's something that we're still exploring and trying to understand how we can scale this better, especially because trust is probably one of these aspects that I believe AI is harming. We are trusting a bit less ourselves as humans because we have something that can, again, do things better than us. And I feel this is the question that will accompany us perhaps for the next interventions because we can do things, we don't necessarily have to trust them. But that's the question.
No doubt. So I actually didn't get a full answer, and I think that's a good thing. It means it's a problem that we still need to solve, which is something that you admitted. And it's good that we have people like you working on this. Madan, if I just come to you, I think just taking off what Maya was saying. You would want to measure people first, right, on the ground continuously. So I'm just wondering, do you think we have enough feedback loops in place to really understand the impact of an application from the people it's serving, right? Do you think, traditionally the ways that we've been able to do this is surveys, obviously language is a barrier there, it's analog, maybe that's how we should be doing it, but we actually have access to AI tools now. I know some people working on getting direct feedback from voice-based chatbots. So two questions, you think we have good feedback loops in place right now to understand impact for the people we're building these use cases for? Two is, do you think we can and should be using AI to collect better feedback?
Absolutely. I just wanted to bring a slightly different context to what you're saying. Today is also National Youth Day, and I think the challenge that India faces is how do you gainfully employ another 150 million youth entering the workforce in the next 10, 15 years. So one of the manifestations we're working on is, from a feedback, trust, etc., is that telecom got democratized through PCOs. Internet got democratized through these internet centers that were set up and people were offered that internet service there. We are visualizing that AI should get democratized through an agentic AI cafe, which will be in every village of the country, which is run by an entrepreneur who's a local youth, who then enables the local communities to come in. He will help them create an agent, manage the agent, look at what are the problems, solutions. Now imagine a network of 750,000 such entrepreneurs, youth, who are engaging with communities on a daily basis, and there's a network of these agents where we're getting real-time feedback loops on what is working in which village, what is working in Kerala that can be replicated in Kashmir, what is working in Kashmir that can be learned and taken to Odisha. So I still think we have to think a phygital model. We have to create opportunities where we can create entrepreneurs and enable youth to stay in their own villages and to earn income. So if I'm a youth staying in a village and I have 5,000 subscribers who are paying me 50 rupees a month, hey, and if I'm adding value of 500 rupees, I'm earning 25,000 rupees a month by offering this as a service. So the aspect of not thinking only digital but a physical model and leveraging young people in the village to be solution creators for problems that the community faces, I think is one manifestation. I love the quote here on this thing that every thought we think is creating our future. I think if together we can collectively put our priorities and put a thought saying that we have to enable youth to earn incomes, we have to create digital economies locally, we should avoid migration, and we should enable mass flourishing of our villages. If that is the thought we operate on, I think that is the future that we create.
Correct. So combine physical and digital interventions, agent seems to be something that is the current kind of hype, but you described a way in which actually they might be useful for this feedback mechanism. Okay, we're almost at time, so maybe last point from you, Deepak. We talked about obviously working with local communities to understand actually impact. Let's pan out. This is a global AI summit. Obviously, we have representatives from different countries. What is good international collaboration in doing measurement right and in rewarding the right impactful use cases look like?
Okay, very quickly. I think first is to, sometimes people look at this multilateral organization, think they should be the fountainhead of big ideas and stuff like that. Most of the time, my feeling is the multilateral organizations are not at the forefront of it. They are actually behind the curve. A lot of the ideas are actually coming from countries, from regions, and all sorts of places. But the multilaterals are much better in taking those ideas, which are well established in one part, and arbitrate and diffuse it to the other parts of it. So a good example is DPI. So once DPI is well established in the Indian context, there's a lot of demand for it, and I think World Bank and others have done a fairly good job in making sure that those DPI ideas, the research, the technology, the people are all kind of adapted into different contexts. And so that to me is one good way for, and in this particular Bharat AI summit that we are going to have, there's a World Bank partnership with NITI and others to actually produce a compendium of impact use cases around the world. So I think that's one way that we could help. The second one possibility is, as I said, starting with the analog foundation. A lot of these organizations deal not with technology but with the rest of the world. How do you create the scaling requirement? How do you create entrepreneurship? How do you get the infrastructure right? How do you help in making sure that a lot of the stacks are in place and the money, the finance and other things? So to me, those are the ideas that one should be looking at as an arbitrator of DPI and AI knowledge across the world. And second is to strengthen the analog foundation of the AI.
Okay, awesome. We are actually exactly at the time that I intended to end this. I really, honestly, I gotta give you guys credit for doing this. There should be really insightful answers. I mean, for me at least, the big takeaway is, look, I think we know what to measure for impact. That was always clear. It's how should we do it. The process is what I think I got a lot of insight on, right? You want to start with physical analog systems, build that up, have clear, robust systems, but then think about intelligently when to apply AI, right? And this framework of making sure that contextual, conversational, continuous, I thought was really useful. I think two, really thinking about serving the user. In this case, whatever the use case is, the farmer, the healthcare worker, and so on. Yeah, keeping them front and center, thinking about their needs, having feedback mechanisms to really get feedback from them. So local partnerships really important, but then like you said, international collaboration, international partnerships. So there's a role obviously for diplomacy, for multilateral organizations, for governments, and I think that's why this summit makes sense. I think before I just hand it back, are there any questions in the room for anyone? Maybe have time for one question, yeah?
Sir, I just wanted to ask, with AI becoming so powerful, what impact is it going to have on cybersecurity? Is it going to be more strengthened, or is it going to be more vulnerable? As ma'am mentioned, systems are going to be much more agile in future. So, in what context cybersecurity can be handled with respect to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I want to bring it back to obviously the theme for this, right? Which is how can we reward people who are building systems that are secure? So, for me at least, there is a big metric around resilience. So ensuring our systems are resilient to cybersecurity attacks, globally, domestically. So the short answer, is it going to be more of a cybersecurity risk? I think yes. And I think it's something that we need to build defenses against. And I think anyone who is building that, from the ground up, into their AI use cases needs to be rewarded. So short answer, anybody else?
I think that we're already seeing that cybersecurity is becoming much more relevant in the AI discussions because we're becoming much more data vulnerable. It's all across public livelihoods. We're seeing much more cybersecurity and AI startups going together, AI-driven security testing. But again, resilience is key. Also literacy. We need to make sure that the users are aware of what is being given away. I would say quite an interesting time for cybersecurity startups to go into this domain because, again, we're sharing our data much more frequently because it can do some good things, but again, it can also be problematic. So.
And I just want to maybe add the point Mother made, agents, fantastic, huge opportunity, but also a risk, right? You're deploying agents that have autonomy, have access to data, highly capable systems, definitely increase cybersecurity risk. On that note, I know David's already looking at me. I also need to rush. So can we just have a round of applause for the wonderful panel, please?
Thank you, Amlan. That was a super insightful, quick panel. Can I ask that you stay back? We'll have a quick felicitation, take a photograph, and we'll wrap up today's session. Quick group photograph. Thank you. With that, we come to a close of this working group session. I really want to thank you for participating with us. I hope these insights shared were useful. We look forward to seeing you at the summit in February. Take care.